researcher that will end today's research talks is Danial Farooq. He'll be talking about tackling climate change using technology. Danial Farooq is a PhD chemistry candidate at UCL affiliated with the Catalysis Hub, conducting research in Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, which utilises advanced chemical imaging techniques to address pressing industry challenges. Holding a master's degree in engineering science, his expertise extends to sustainable aviation fuel, complemented by research experience in biotechnology at the University of Missouri. His talk is about using technology to combat climate change through innovative waste-to-fuel processes and circular economy principles, showing the potential for a sustainable future that harmonizes modern living with environmental responsibility. So without further ado,
Assalamu alaikum. So the talk I'm going to give today is an Islamic perspective on driving innovation for a sustainable future, starting with the climate problem. So I'm sure we all know now that we are in a sort of climate catastrophe, and the average temperature of the Earth is now 1.1 degrees warmer than it was in the late 1800s and warmer than any time in the last 100,000 years. It's clear to see that our human activity, burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, industrial processes, and agriculture are contributing to increasing greenhouse gases, which re-radiate heat back from the sun and result in increasing temperatures. Now, if we look at the graph here, we can clearly see that in the last century, temperatures have been increasing.
Recording in progress.
Temperatures have been increasing, and this correlates with an increase in carbon dioxide emissions. And this also correlates with an increasing mass of ice sheet loss from the melting ice caps. And this is resulting in increasing sea levels in the last 100 years, particularly in the last 20 years. And this increasing temperatures and increasing sea levels is affecting the delicate balance that the Earth is in, including the carbon cycle, the sea levels, and so on. And this can lead to increasingly extreme weather events. It was said that climate change and increasingly extreme weather events have caused a surge in natural disasters over the past 50 years, disproportionately impacting poorer countries. The World Meteorological Organization and UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction said on Wednesday, I'm not sure what Wednesday, but but it was said. So the point is, right, that climate change has been linked to many recent catastrophes. It has played a major role in the Libya flood, in the floods. It was said that the Pakistan floods were made up to 50% worse by global heating. The Australia bushfires that we saw recently were made 30% worse, likely by climate change. And it's also said that global warming could trigger 5-year-long droughts in Europe from 2030. So this can be cost many lives on Earth and displace huge amounts of the population. The IMF have reported that if climate change continues and drastic action is not taken, then we can see with the red graphs there that there will be extreme weather events, which we have seen the catastrophic disasters that can take place as a result of, will become increasingly more likely. So, I think whilst maybe we have some climate change deniers or whatnot, but what we hear from some people, I would say that it does not take a genius to look at the world around us and see that it's unsustainable, especially living in the West, like in the UK or the US. By looking at the amount of waste that is produced, it does not take a genius to see that this will be unsustainable. This will affect the ability for future generations to live, and it will affect the amount of resources available. It is reported that per capita in the UK, we consume around 15,000 kilograms of materials per year. That's equivalent to the weight of around 200 adults. So it's a huge amount of material. And this is due to capitalist intentions or capitalist goals for pursuit of growth at all cost. So the capitalist economic system, which the banking system relies on and huge industries relies on perpetual growth. And this perpetual growth is encouraging industries to produce, and produce. And it's encouraging us to consume and consume more. And this is why we see things like planned obsolescence, which results in more waste. So what this means is that industry are actually designing things so that they break quickly so that we can buy them again next year. Because, for instance, if you were to buy a phone that lasts 20 years, then how are they going to make profits for the next 10 years or 20 years, for decades to come? So the amount of waste that is being produced is alarming, and the amount of energy which is going to produce this waste is alarming. And this is resulting in atmospheric pollution, waterway pollution, droughts and floods, land degradation and loss of biodiversity. And unfortunately, it is in the Muslim world and in poorer countries who are suffering the effects. So as Muslims, it's imperative for us to understand this issue and think about the causes. The unsustainability of our nations and this capitalist greed is resulting in greed for resources. So it is the colonial sort of intention is resulting in countries trying to colonize and take and steal resources from other countries so that they can fulfill their greed for growth and the capitalist greed for growth. And even recently we have seen that just after a few weeks after October 7, Israel awarded, or I'd say the Zionist entity awarded, gas exploration licenses to Eni, BP, and for others. So they are set to profit for more gas, more oil, which will fulfill this greed to produce more resources. And in Africa, for instance, another headline is as we study, we can see the huge expansion in cobalt and copper mining is wrecking lives. So the question is, are there enough resources for us to live on Earth? The population is expected to reach 9.7 billion by 2050. And can we continue living in the same way? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Mulk, in Ayah 15, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور. It is He who has made the world, the earth, manageable for you. Travel in its regions, eat His provision, and to Him you will be resurrected. And I want to put emphasis on the word dhululan, which can mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the world rideable for us, manageable for us. So that means that the world has been made to meet our needs. So anyone who says that we need to reduce population or there's not enough resources, this is an inevitable problem, it's untrue. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put enough on the earth for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also tells us that He has made the earth a bed for us in Surah Taha in Ayah 53. However, whilst there are enough resources, this does not mean that, we think that there's enough resources and we just consume and we waste, because we are also commanded in Islam not to waste. And the Messenger of Allah, when he passed by Sa'ad, when he was performing ablution, and he said, "What is this extravagance?" He said. And then he replied, "Can there be any extravagance in ablution?" And he said, even if you are on the bank, yes, even if you are on the bank of a flowing river. So even when we're doing wudu ablution in a river, we shouldn't waste. So what to say when we know that there's limited resources? And we're also told in the Quran not to be excessive. And indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like those who commit excess in Surah Al-A'raf, Ayah 31. And we are also given the example of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who used to sew or mend his clothing and repair his shoes, which in the waste hierarchy is better than recycling, because this is to reuse and refurbish goods. There's less energy used in this. So, what is the potential of technological innovation, and how can we make sure that we use our resources? It was argued by economist Thomas Malthus that the population growth would outpace the ability for us to produce enough resources. However, he did not predict the growth of technological and agricultural innovations to make use of those resources. So he was proven false. And our existence today and our ability to provide for the population today shows that his predictions were untrue. And in fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided enough energy. And if the sun provides enough energy to us, that for every 10,000 watts that the sun provides, we would only have to use 1 watt of it. So 0.01% of the sun's power will provide all of the power that we use today. So the potential is there, but we have to develop the technology to do that, and there needs to be the political will. So an example of us utilizing resources and reducing energy is to work towards a circular economy. And the emphasis of a circular economy is that the raw materials are produced from the waste. So the waste feeds into the raw materials, and we want to minimize the residual waste by designing more carbon-friendly materials and sustainable materials. I know it was said earlier, and someone asked from the audience, why do we have to keep studying science? Why do we need to keep researching? And the fact of the matter is that research and more knowledge allows us to design more efficient technology that can utilize our resources in ways that we can't even think about now because we don't have that knowledge. And this is shown by the development of high-performance semiconductors, nanomaterials, and energy materials, which have enabled many of the innovations that allow us to live in the way that we are doing today. During my PhD, I researched one example of sort of circular economy waste-to-fuel technology, which is a Fischer-Tropsch process. And just as an example, it shows how you can convert carbon-neutral feedstock, which could be biomass or waste, and then through chemical processes, and specifically the Fischer-Tropsch synthesis, we can convert that into hydrocarbon fuels. And when you burn that hydrocarbon fuels, that same carbon dioxide can be absorbed by the biomass to generate a sustainable way to produce energy that can be used as sustainable aviation fuel or drop-in fuel. And there's around 30 of these FT plants in the world. For instance, one example is this in Nevada, which is planning to convert 175,000 tons of landfill waste into 11 million gallons of renewable fuel. So it's turning what we say waste into fuel. So the importance, a lot of my PhD work, whilst I'm not going to go into technicalities today due to time, but involves material characterization. So we use X-ray scattering techniques to study catalysts, to make catalysts more efficient so that we can convert into higher quality fuel, use lower temperatures, and increase the yield for more efficiency. And material characterization techniques like this and research in science is very important in order to design better technological low-carbon technologies. Research like this takes place at places which we call synchrotrons, for example. And this would be like the size of a football pitch. So I'm based quite close to this building here. And this is the Diamond Light Source, which is in South Oxford. It cost around £500 million to build this sort of synchrotron. And it can generate light 10 billion times brighter than the sun. So the X-rays produced by the synchrotrons allow us to examine materials on the nanoscale during reactions. And when we have that understanding of materials, then we can discover new reactions, new processes, and harness the power and energy that's available, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made available to us to produce, get closer to a circular economy and to have low carbon energy available to us. Now the question is, why isn't more of this being done? And the reality is economics and politics. So extracting oil is cheaper than sustainable energy because you just get it from the ground. And a lot of these energy processes require more investment, and the political uncertainty that we see deters these large investments. For instance, we saw recently that the ban on petrol cars in the UK was moved from 2030 to 2035. Just an example, it shows that big businesses cannot have trust in the political unstable system, which changes its decisions and sort of short-term cyclic elections. And this instability deters large investment. And also the lack of political will, because of the secular system, they don't they believe in profit over sort of higher values, higher moral values, such as what we have in Islam. And this means that profit and prioritization of people in this life, because they do not believe in higher accountability, means that climate change doesn't become a big issue for them because they only care about their immediate self-interest in the short term. Finally, technology is a tool which can be used productively or wastefully. So technology, as good as it is, if we produce more energy or more sustainable energy, which produces less carbon emissions, it won't make that much of a difference if people as individuals are still wasteful. For instance, more efficient cars don't mean anything if people think that they're saving money and start driving more and using more fuel or creating more waste if things become cheaper and more efficient. So the actions of individuals is important, but we need to understand that the actions of individuals do not happen in a vacuum. And in fact, the values that are being taught in the society, in schools, and the values and the belief system and the ideology of the state also influences our actions as individuals. So if we want to make change as individuals, then we also need to think about how our individuals' actions as Muslims can influence the political system around us globally and around the world. And the reason why I mention this is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He has made us khala'ifa, successors on earth, the plural of khalifa. So this is something which is important for us, and that we must be environmental stewards or stewards in general who look after the world, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. So it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is in the skies and what is in the earth, which means it is a trust, it's an amana for us, and it's definitely something that will be questioned upon on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And unfortunately, the most polluted countries, worse than China in terms of air pollution, many of them in that list we can see are Muslim countries. However, we should not attribute this to Islam, and these are post-colonial states who are not implementing Islam. And in fact, if the values of Islam, the true values of Islam, actually encourage the protection of the environment. I do not have time to go into the evidences for each of these points, but there are evidences to back this up, that Islam protects the environment and encourages avoiding of excess consumption and waste, protection of the biosphere of planting trees, preventing of sort of killing trees and providing the rights of plants and animals, preventing water pollution, supporting recycling and reusing of goods, protecting air quality and reducing disease, avoiding damage generally. However, we need to, as Muslims, as individuals living in a world where Islam is not being implemented, we also must understand that the importance of the Islamic jurisprudence and governance to ensure protection and the environment. Because I'll give an example. For instance, people growing up, maybe like 10, 15 years ago, people would not normally take carrier bags to the supermarket because it was free. But as soon as the government introduced a law saying now it's 20p, nearly everyone is taking bags now. So this is an example to show how political action can influences directly the actions of individuals. And our Muslim countries need to be leading in this sort of political action, but unfortunately they are not, because they are implementing Western systems. So what we need to do as Muslims is work for that change as Muslims to challenge the global capitalist system, which is destroying the environment and destroying the world and causing devastation on a mass scale to a very high level. So examples from Islamic civilization, we can see that in the past, that the Ottomans, for instance, legalized environmental affairs and enacted laws to protect them, and this is something for us to look up to and aspire to implement in the future.
Great, thank you, Daniel, for your talk. Does anyone have any questions?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Thank you for that a very beautiful talk. I think first of all just like to reflect on the very beautiful hadith about even if you're by a running stream of water, you still don't waste the water for your wudu. And this sort of idea that even if there is a plentiful supply of a resource, you don't use more than you need. So, for example, even if you're in a conference and there's a plethora of wonderful sandwiches, you still don't eat every single one you can grab. You still only eat how much you need just to fill a third of your stomach. And I also wanted to ask, because you made a lot of comments that have quite significant impacts in terms of our politics. And I was wondering, like, being part of the Department of Chemistry, how your supervisors and peers, scientists, feel about you venturing into the political sphere as a scientist.
What do you mean by venturing into the political sphere?
So like,
Sorry.
so just like making having a say in terms of like these big political concepts like capitalism and consumerism.
Interesting question. I have discussed this with colleagues, and yeah, some of them agree. Some of them sort of see capitalism as almost what Winston Churchill said is sort of the best thing that we have. And then that's because obviously if they're non-Muslim, they don't know Islam as an alternative. So then it would have to go. I would say that the fundamental discussion then to be had would be if does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exist and revelation, and then we can sort of show the guidance of Islam. But otherwise they do agree and do see the disadvantages and harms that have been caused by capitalism, that they see that it's sort of the best of the worst.
Okay, I'm so sorry, but we don't have time for any more questions, but let's give a round of applause to Daniel.